What's going on, folks? Season 2 here, kicking off right before Schaumburg NARBC. I am Nick Karaskevich again with the Tread, kicking off Season 2 here, going back to our normal format. Decided to go back into my backyard and go with Chicago's own. We got Morphologix here with Marcus. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Nick?
Good. I mean, so one, I want to make sure, did I say the name and the brand right? I mean, it's like a tongue twister for me. So
yes, sir. Morphologix.
yeah. So, I mean, I know we talked a little bit when I was inviting you to come on the show. I mean, what I thought was really interesting is, I mean, one, give people a little bit around like your background and then obviously, kind of your journey into ball pythons. Cause I think it's very unique. I mean, most people, it's like, I liked reptiles, so I went into reptiles, but I mean, you actually have some backing in the space with animals and biology.
Yeah. So, I mean, my entire life has been all about animals, honestly, from before I can even remember. But reptiles were actually not the first animal that I fell in love with. And that was actually everything aquatic.
Yeah.
So, from little kid, I was just obsessed with fish and anything that lived in water. And that included, frogs and snakes, like
Right.
peripherally, but not like directly. So actually at about age 7, I started keeping freshwater fish and
Okay.
basically just started with like a small tropical aquarium.
Yeah.
This escalated very quickly to like I would always spend every 20 bucks I'd get at Christmas or a birthday on more fish, anything
Yeah.
for the tanks. Ended up with a whole bunch of tanks, switched over to saltwater shortly after that. And then flash forward, I had that as kind of my main nerdy passion
Yeah.
all from there until going to college. I went to college for biology, at which point in college, I decided to get a pet ball python just for the first time, just to branch
Yeah.
out, try something different.
Right.
And at the time, just got a normal. I didn't know like that all of this was even a thing at that point. So I just got a normal because I wasn't allowed to keep snakes as a kid. So figured, might as well try it out. Obviously, fell in love with that. But basically, shortly after getting the normal, I discovered they came in other colors. Wanted to get just one or two others and maybe just try breeding as like an offhand
Yeah.
project. And I actually did that then for a couple years, just producing 1 or 2 clutches per season. Graduated from college. Then I was actually hired at the Shed Aquarium here in Chicago as a marine biologist. So still pursuing the fish thing
Right.
primarily with the reptiles as sort of just a side hobby project. And then flash forward again, after several years at the Shed, I had been doing really well with Morphologix and all of the snakes and was dealing with some stuff I wasn't super stoked
Yeah.
with the marine biology career route. And I decided to pursue this full time. And I've actually been doing this as my full time gig for almost exactly 2 years now, as of about 2 weeks ago. So
Yeah, I mean that's awesome. I mean, from my side, obviously, one congrats because I think
thank
that's
you.
one thing I want to highlight in the hobby. I mean that takes some serious guts to know when that break point is, as far as like when it's like, man, I can do this, I can jump to do this full time. And I mean, I know at least from my side. I mean, again, maybe this is my opinion. I mean, but I mean, you really burst onto the scene. I feel like I feel like hot and fast over the past 2 years. That's how I found out about you, was through, Desert Ghost and cryptic stuff, Redhead stuff, as Redhead now has started to really pop up and kind of be, I don't want to say like the next hot project, but I feel like one of those, hot genes in the years to come that you're going to be seeing a lot of it, especially, what we've already started to see with some of the Redhead Clown stuff. I know that that's been
Yeah.
something you're super passionate about. You've invested a lot from a collection perspective as far as where you're driving and where you're going. I mean, so far, I mean, kind of, what's your most anticipated redhead clutch, either, kind of going into this year, or has it already hatched maybe, or is it in the incubator yet, or is that top secret? You can leave it as top secret too.
No, it's not top secret. I mean, like I'm happy to share it. But so actually today, so I have a few different redhead things going on this year that I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Already really stoked. Just about a week and a half ago, I hatched the first redhead clutch of the season. and I got lucky to hit 2 different redhead Batman, I think yellow belly, redhead yellow belly Batman
Yeah.
males in that clutch, which last year I had tried all year to produce a male to upgrade my redhead male, and
Yeah.
finally made that happen this year. So I'm super, super grateful for that. But actually today I got a clutch slayed from a redhead het pied female,
Okay. Yeah.
which is kind of a different spin on it, but I paired her to a leopard clown pied. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to take redhead into the clown pied project now. So we'll see
Yeah.
what that does. You never
No,
know with pied.
I'm kind of curious. I mean, to my knowledge, I mean, if anyone on is watching too, you can feel free to comment. But I mean, has Redhead Pie been made? I mean, obviously, I've seen the Redhead Clown stuff. I've seen it with the Codoms. I don't really think I've seen it in any other recessive besides Clown
Yeah,
at
it's
this
been
point.
hit hard in clown for sure, is the direction that almost everyone's
Yeah.
going. I'm trying to blank on his name, but the guy from 412 Balls did make a redhead pied.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah. I don't know. I know who you're talking about. I can't think of who the name is. So apologize, 412, if you're
yeah,
watching
sorry,
this
but
at some point.
still
But
shouting him out. He made the first redhead pied, and
yeah.
but to my knowledge, there's only been the one made, and so we
Right.
still don't really know if, do they usually come out high white or low white, or just
Right.
like behaves in that at all. And so I kind of took a gamble on pursuing that project, and we'll see in another
Yeah.
couple years maybe how it really pays off. But if I get lucky this year, I'll be hatching some redhead pied het clown.
Right.
Um, so yeah, we'll see about that one.
Yeah, I think my thing, it's always interesting, obviously, when you take a gene like Redhead and stuff, that I wouldn't say, like, it hasn't gotten to the point yet, like things where, like back when Leopard was newer, or Hurricane or Acid, where then
Yeah,
everyone just starts jumping on and everyone has it. I mean, obviously, for you to already be at this point, you jumped in pretty early. I mean, what's that evaluate? It's always curious to know, everyone's different, but like, what's your evaluation process when you're looking at a gene like that, where there's not still a lot out there? You're going to be one of the first, handful of people to be able to kind of work and do certain things. I mean, what what were you looking for? And I guess what kind of attracted you to said, man, this is it. I'm going to start working with this, and this is where I'm going to take it.
yeah, that's a great question. It's honestly something I'm thinking about all the time, because I'm always just looking on Morph Market for anything that
Yeah,
looks different. And so, I mean, like I said, I spend a lot of time on Morph Market just looking
yeah,
through everything, trying to see if there's anything unusual. And then when I find something unusual, like I saw a redhead and I thought, okay, that looks different from
right,
anything that I've seen. And then I try to make sure that it's definitely its own gene and not
right,
like a copy of something else,
yeah,
because we've of course seen that a lot of times in the hobby.
yeah.
Uh, Not
Coral,
blaming anyone. It's like
Coral Glow Banana, yeah.
yeah, it can happen to any of us if we think we find a new gene, and then it takes you years to prove it out. But so that's always one of the first things I look for when I
Yeah,
see something cool, is just I want to make sure this is a new gene and its
right.
own thing. And it seemed pretty clear. So I think I first saw a redhead about 4 or 5 years ago now. So it
Okay.
was a little while.
Yeah.
Um, and it looked different. It didn't seem to be the same as any other genes that I could tell.
Right.
And so I just decided like it was something I was interested in adding. And then as far as when I actually added it, I immediately wanted to get it into other genes if I could.
Yeah.
And so I picked up my first redheads from Justin Kabilka, but this was kind of before the whole redhead project blew
Yeah.
up and everything. And I guess I was kind of lucky with that one. I mean, I pick up a lot of different genes, and that's one that I picked up that just happened to be the right one. Like,
Right.
I'm a pro at picking the right gene or something. Like, I definitely lucked out with the
Yeah.
redhead performing the way it has.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all, I mean, sometimes have seen some of those ones that people put big bets on, but I think it's what's unique, I think, with that project is how fast, kind of it came from basically hitting on something that frankly just, created the stir, created the craze. Cause I feel like you still see a lot of those genes out there that, they're kind of, I don't know, I kind of call them like contenders. They're almost like, they're not in the UFC, they're trying to get there. They
Yeah.
haven't hit whatever that combo is that's going to make everyone go rush and go crazy to it yet. So that's what I found has been like real unique. I mean, the gene Redhead, I mean, someone can correct me if they know, but I don't think the gene's been around for that long. I mean, maybe 6-7 years at best.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I don't know exactly, but it's definitely a newer gene.
Yeah.
It's not one that's been around for 20 years and was then rediscovered.
Right.
And then, I mean, obviously, like Justin hopped in really early when he saw the first redhead hypo, I believe. So that's the other recessive that you see
Yeah.
redhead in the most is the hypo stuff,
Yeah.
which does have a really cool color too.
Right.
But so, I mean, he kind of picked up on it early for sure, but there were very few people working that project.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, then kind of the other thing too. I mean, I don't know if you consider yourself known for it, but I know like that's part of the way I was introduced to your brand and stuff is, I mean, you do a lot of DG. You've got a lot of really sweet, cryptic or Amur line cryptic,
Thank you.
going on. I mean, so for people that don't know, obviously I call Amur, and I don't know what other people want to consider it. I don't know if it's been confirmed from my estimation. It has been, but Amur is
Yeah,
basically European cryptic is what I call it.
that's exactly what I said.
I mean, did you originally get yours in then from Europe with those lines, or because I was going to say some of the combos you're producing, like I'm like, man, you had to have gotten that from a European guy, like.
I did. So yeah, I went to the source for the Amur and I brought in a pewter harlequin, yellow belly, Amur Desert Ghost,
Yeah,
Marco van Haren in
yeah,
the Netherlands, and that was about I think a little over 3 years ago now. So I've had
right.
a few seasons to work with him now, and I'm definitely loving the stuff I'm hatching, but I do consider it synonymous with cryptic.
Right.
Not
And
trying to like say it's its own thing or
no, right. And that's how I am. I mean, I'll admit I have one Amur line Krypton or whatever you want to
okay.
call it, Amur crypt. I don't know what they even call those in Europe.
They've been calling them like amons, like amons, or
Yeah.
but I like Krypton better. I think it's
It
rolls
just
off
sounds
the tongue
better.
easier. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and then I got, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if you call it American cryptic because I think Billy was the one that coined cryptic at Mutation Creation.
that
So
could be. Yeah,
yeah, so I mean, if I remember correctly, but so I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that's another project that I feel like there's still a lot of legs. You still see just a lot of the typical pastel cryptic DG, yellow belly cryptic DG. We're just starting to see like some of the things like you were mentioning, like when you bought it already in as a pewter, with cinnamon. Harlequin's another one that we're seeing, and for people that don't know about Harlequin, I guess tell them, obviously kind of a little bit, what it does, how it interacts and stuff. Cause obviously that's another one I think maybe you only see maybe a handful, at least in the States, kind of cycling around.
yeah, it's definitely not super popular yet.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work on that. So it's a gene I actually really believe in and am working hard to. So Harlequin is kind of similar to Stranger or Mahogany, I would say, are
Okay.
the most similar genes. It's not quite as extreme in its expression as them,
Right.
but it's essentially you get a strong dorsal stripe straight down the whole snake, and then it tends to circle out the alien heads and
Yeah.
sort of remove most of the like actual dots within the alien head, so they're sort of smoothed out, more
Yeah.
circular. They usually float off of the belly, so you'll
Okay.
get
Yep.
like really cool, just a striped out snake with like little spots floating on the sides.
Yeah.
And so that's basically what the single gene Harlequin does. But actually, excuse me, but Marco Van Haren, who I got that Amur DG mail from, has
Right.
made a number of super Harlequin Desert Ghosts actually, and they are nuts, like
Yeah.
ridiculously busy patterned actually. So I think I may have actually hit a super Harlequin DG last year, but it had super pastel and cinnamon in it, so I'm really not confident in calling
Right.
it as such. But that's a project that I'm really working on this next season is to make some super Harlequin DG stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
guess I'm always curious too. I mean, obviously, I think most people know for me with the DG stuff, like it didn't change or freak me out. But I mean, when all the stuff came out with the polygenic stuff, I mean, for you, just so people get another perspective that's not mine, I mean, what was that? I mean, for you, did it mean anything? Are you excited about the advancements with the shed testing? I mean, what are your, personal thoughts here?
I think it's really interesting, no doubt about it. And actually, my girlfriend is a geneticist, so I definitely talked to her at length about this. So she works on molecular genetics, so
Okay.
she really knows her stuff.
Yeah.
But basically, I don't think it changes much yet as
Right.
far as what we're practically doing. I mean, I've been breeding Desert Ghost myself for almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
And I was breeding it as a simple recessive and never once had a clutch come out like in a way that I wouldn't have expected,
Yeah.
according to simple Mendelian inheritance. So
Right.
I think it's really interesting and can definitely help us refine like the quality of our DGs over the
Yeah.
coming years. But there's just simply not enough information out yet, in my opinion, about what the DGC is and all
Right.
that, or if there's even a DGD or how many genes in the polygenic trait there actually are. And
Yeah.
then if any of those are more important than the other ones, like what if DGC is actually the one that controls most of the phenotype, and that's why there's snakes that are homozygous A and B that look like normals. And
Right.
so what if those are just genes that are associated with desert ghosts, but not actually the ones that are controlling the
Yeah.
phenotype? So I think we just simply don't have enough information yet, but it's really interesting.
Right. Yeah. And I think, like I said, part of the reason I wanted to do that, like I said, is I mean, obviously, one, put someone's opinion on there that's been working with Desert Ghost longer than myself, just to kind of be able to tell people, like, you don't have to freak out, pump the
Yeah.
brakes, don't worry, like, don't worry, on it. I think like that's what you saw, like those first 48 hours, people
Yeah.
were freaking out. And I'm just like, guys, it's not like it's like a detrimental, like dead end. Like to me, I felt like people freaked out on that the same way that people felt about when they found out the Carmel had issues as it related to fertility. And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
calm down, guys. It's not dead. It's still
Uh,
got legs.
Desert Ghost has a lot of legs still.
Yeah.
I mean, we've still only scratched the surface with it. And I mean, the gene's been, I don't know exactly how many years DG has been around, but it's got to be over 15 to 20 years.
Yeah. And that's,
Yeah.
I thought I heard someone like in like the past month say like 21 years or something
Yeah.
like that. Cause I mean, someone can correct me if I'm wrong too, but obviously there's the enhancer line, there's Desert Ghost. I mean, there was Sahara, which was proven to also be Desert Ghost, if I'm correct. I mean, so there were multiple times, I mean, it's been brought in and all been, into the same stuff. I mean, I think what I'm curious on, because I haven't seen it, obviously you have a lot of the components to probably do it. Do you ever expect to start bringing your Redhead and your DG stuff together?
Yes. So I actually already last year hatched some, well, so it's unfortunate because it was kind of a dud of a clutch. I had two hatchlings that failed to thrive
Yeah.
and ultimately didn't make it, but I actually hatched a Firefly Redhead Spot Nose Clown het Desert Ghost last year. And then she just, I don't know, something just didn't hatch out right.
Yeah.
He ate, like, did okay for a couple months and then just declined. She just would not thrive.
Yeah.
So I'm working on it for sure, and already I might have some more building blocks for it hatching out this year.
Yeah.
But so my first attempt was kind of a bummer, but yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to get it into Desert Ghost Clown. And I mean, just Desert Ghost as a whole, I'm curious what just a redhead
Right.
DG will look like on its own too.
Yeah, and I mean, I know obviously, we've talked obviously a lot about the cryptic and Amur, the Desert Ghost, the Redhead, the Clown. We hit on a little bit with the Pied piece. I mean, obviously, there's I think now what is it, 15 recessives known or question mark. I know some people,
Yeah.
depending on how I think you think about like paint or even monsoon now, as some people call it, fractal and then super fractal. But, in that ballpark around 14, 15 recessives, maybe there's 16 now. I don't really know because I guess zebra is another one people are arguing
Yeah.
over. But, when we look at that, I mean, besides those few that you already have, is there either one that you're excited about that you got coming up, kind of bring in and build it into your collection, or that you're, you're looking at as far as like potential, as far as how that might, kind of max in with your projects? I mean, is there something or a certain recessive out there that's got you, excited for the future, obviously outside of those few?
Yeah, it's hard to narrow it down because there's honestly like a few that fit that criteria, but
Yeah.
I will say Sentinel paint, if you do consider that a recessive, that's what
Right.
I'm super excited about. I only brought that into my collection about a year and a half ago or so.
Right. Yeah.
I just have one male that's a vanilla Sentinel, and then a couple single gene Sentinel females that are
Yep.
getting close to breeding size now. And so, actually, just yesterday, I got my first clutch for Het Sentinel stuff laid. So
Yeah.
I'm literally just starting that project, but that's one that I'm really excited also to put Redhead into the Sentinel. I think is going to be really cool since Redhead is a Granidy gene and
Yeah.
so Granidy. So I
Right.
think that could be a pretty extreme interaction. Um, and then other than the Sentinel paint stuff, Black Axanthic is actually a recessive that I'm working really hard. I just haven't produced any of the visuals I'm hoping
Yeah.
for yet, but I've built all kinds of built-in blocks with the Black Axanthic project, and especially Black Axanthic Desert Ghost. Actually, I have a whole bunch of hets, double hets, for that project. And this season, I have a couple females that are built in right now that could make Black Axanthic Desert Ghosts if I get lucky, but we'll see. They would be late season clutches if they end up going. So
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think you hit on something, I think that was key, which you mentioned, the granite type genes. And I think, a lot of people, there again, I think a lot of people get confused when we hear granite or the way we talk about granite. I'm sure some people, if they're on here that know me,
yeah,
like I love granite type stuff, but some people they get concerned. I know it's always been referenced to me. They're like, well, I'm concerned about putting two granite type genes together. Like, how am I going to be able to pick those apart? Is there any of that that ever goes through like your head when you do that? Like, I'll be honest, like for me, I'm just like, nah, I'll figure it out. If I want to put it together, I'm going to do it. But I'm just always
yeah,
curious because I know that that's like kind of a school of thought. Some people are always nervous about putting them together because they're afraid that they'll be able to kind of tell them apart just or how the interaction will work because they're, two of the kind of the same kind of look or appearance, from a graininess.
yeah. No, I think it's very smart to think about that ahead of time because it can be a real pain when you hatch a clutch and just can't ID the babies at all. So I
Yeah.
think it's smart to consider that, but it honestly doesn't stop me from doing any of the pairings. So kind of like what you were saying, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still gonna do those pairings because I think it could come out with really cool babies. Now, whether or not I'll be able to ID those babies right away or not is a different story.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you can always figure out what you are hatching, even if it takes you a couple years to prove it out. So in the
Yeah.
long run, you'll figure it out sooner or later. You might just not be able to sell a hatchling as definitively
Definite. Yeah.
this, and that.
Yeah. Yeah. We got the question coming here from the audience from
Yeah.
Mercury Exotics. So Mike wants to know what your thoughts are on puzzle.
I think they look great, but just as far as my collection is concerned, I have so much cryptic. And to me,
Yeah.
they do something similar. Like, I
Yeah.
think puzzle is actually a bit more of an extreme gene in terms of its expression is a little higher than cryptic usually, but
Yeah.
they both do a similar effect with how they affect the eye stripes, creating sort of like the neck stripes, the overall pattern. And so, like, I'm so deep into the cryptic project. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
I probably have 50 animals now with the cryptic gene, I imagine. And before I bring in a whole nother recessive, it has to be like really different from anything else that I have.
Yeah, no, I think that that's a good point. I mean, speaking as someone who owns a cryptic puzzle and obviously the other ones that I've seen too, I've
Yeah.
compared them all. I mean, there's not enough of an like I definitely tell people like if I put it on the table next to another one, I mean, unless you really know what you're looking at, like I'm easily think I could probably put it on the table, pass it off as a puzzle, and people wouldn't realize there's a second recessive in
Yeah.
there. I definitely think it makes the pattern better, a little bit crazier, a little bit crisper to some degrees, but like it's nothing where I would think if we want to take things in the same allele, I would think that there's a better chance that we'll find something that's dramatic, that's clown, or even maybe krypton with puzzle
Yeah, yeah,
than you will with cryptic and puzzle. Because I'm always been kind of in the same school of thought, and I know like Will at TGW, when I got into puzzle with him, like he always made the joke. He's like cryptic's just like a dirtier puzzle, man. He's like, why do you
yeah.
need both? Why do you need both? So I like
I
both.
mean, you never know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, we've also got, I mean, Schaumburg NARBC, which is obviously the newest location. So now going into, I think, what is this, the third year that we've done Schaumburg NARBC. Obviously you get some of the same crowd that goes to Tinley and the other ones. You get some new folks that have never been to one before. I mean, if someone is, coming to the Morphologix booth, I mean, what should they be excited about? What type of stuff are they going to be, going to be seeing? Or are they going to be, being able to potentially, put some money down and bring home?
Yeah, that's a good question. So actually today I was looking through a bunch of babies and trying to decide who's ready to go to Schaumburg.
Yeah.
But I'd say some of the coolest stuff that might make an appearance are some of the stranger desert ghosts that I just hatched recently, which I'm really happy with those hatchlings, and some stranger het DGs.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of cryptic project stuff. Speak of the devil. And I mean, honestly, I should have a pretty good variety at this show. I'm just trying to figure out how many hatchlings that have just hatched out recently are going to be able to make it, because I don't want to stress them out
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
Might have some confusion stuff on the table. Yeah, some harlequins. So there's another gene. I might have a few Trojans on the table. This
Yeah.
is my first year hatching Trojans, which is another gene I'm
I
super stoked about.
I love that gene. I really
Yeah,
think that's another one of those, codoms, incomplete dominant genes that have so much more leg from just what it can do just in any recessive combo as it is.
yeah.
Let alone just multi-gene codoms.
Oh, I think that gene is entirely untapped so far.
Yeah.
But just from the couple supers that I've seen and everything, I think that gene's gonna go really far. So I'm
Yeah.
hitting that one hard for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm still kicking myself. I remember when Florida Reptile Ranch started releasing those.
Yeah.
And I remember when he released one of the first females he released, I believe, was a Enchi Trojan.
Okay.
So there was an Enchi Trojan. And I remember I was talking with him, and like at the time, like I had other buddies. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like going trying to buy that thing. It's not going to go anywhere with that project or whatever.
Yeah.
And like I let other people get into my head. And I remember then happened to be, forget what I was talking to Justin about, at NARBC. And he was mentioning about this Enchi Trojan he got. And I
Yeah.
was like, wait, you were the other buyer on the other end? Like, come on, man. Like at that point, I realized, I was like, when that was one of like the 5 or 6 or however many he grabbed at that time, I was like, at that point, I realized I screwed up. I was like, well, I shouldn't have backed out. But
I mean, it shows you can trust your instincts though for the future.
no, right. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that gene, I mean, that's one. I mean, I think the Trojan clown stuff, I really think what that, is going to be, one. I still actually really want to see. I know that they're similar, and some people are going to say they're not going to do much. I really still want to see Trojan in Ultramill or in Monarch, just see if it
Yeah.
actually adds any additional enhancement or blushing or anything to that degree. But yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
yeah, I mean, I think any of those, I think kind of going. And I think that's kind of a thing. I mean, obviously our industry is maturing as people are going into shows like NARBC. I think their thought process, even newer breeders that are coming in, you're noticing their thought process is changing from what it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where people were, I would say to a degree, more so buying because it was cool than figuring it out later. You're seeing a lot more calculated buyers. As our industry matures, I mean, what do you think? Like someone who's going in and stuff, obviously, besides getting what they like, some of these more, enhancement and subtle genes when you're building your collection, kind of where do you rank that against maybe someone's like base recessive projects is kind of where that goes as a foundational building block?
That's a really tough question, honestly. And I mean, in one respect, I think it's amazing if you're coming into the hobby now, you have so many options of just crazy cool projects that you can get into right away. Cause
Yeah.
like when I got in, the options were honestly really limited, both just because I didn't have a ton of money to go buying
Right.
anything crazy, but also like there literally weren't that many. Like Justin had just produced the first yellow belly pied, and that was
Yeah.
like just adding one gene to pied at the time was something insane, or one gene to a clown. So now, I mean, you get in and there's a million options. So I think fundamentally you still do have to just pick whatever you like the most, which
Right.
is a little cliche at this point, but
Yeah.
it's still true. Like at the end of the day,
100%.
you got to be working with snakes that you're happy to look at them and check on them every day, and that you're going to just be amped for whatever they're producing. You don't want to be hatching clutches and not excited about it.
Right.
I guess to get deeper into your question, like I would say you do need to build your recessive base right away nowadays if you're trying to do this as either a hobby business or if you're really trying to create a larger business or anything. I do think recessives are key. And so if you can pick maybe 2 or 3 recessives that you just love when you're first getting into the hobby, I think
Yeah.
that's probably what I would do if I were getting in right now. And then as far as the enhancing and subtle genes and all that, I think maybe it takes some people a little while in the hobby before they start appreciating what those can do, because
Yeah.
you see a Trojan and you're like, that's okay, but look at like a leopard is a way more dramatic.
Right.
And it's like, well, true, but if you're going for an investment, maybe a Trojan's a better
Yeah.
investment. But then, so there's so many things to consider.
Yeah, and then that's part of the reason I kind of bring it up because I think like you mentioned, I mean, there's some folks it's like it depends on when you start learning, the longer you get in the hobby with those subtle ones. But there's genes for people who have been in the hobby, like Trojan and Russo, Lace is
Yeah,
another one as
yeah,
well. Where I feel like a lot of people they look at and they're like, meh, like you said, they say the same thing. They're like, oh man, but this pastel leopard is amazing. I'm like, so I think it's how do we break that barrier, the kind of that boundary to a degree? Because I feel like that's almost the thing. Like you always try to explain it to someone new in the hobby. You hope that they're going to get it, and then you almost feel bad when then it's like 6 years later or something. They come back and they're like, so you got a Russo for me or something,
yeah.
and it's not like it's something that crazy or that expensive with some of those either. But I think it's, how do we get that kind of bridge that gap for people to be able to see that? And I don't know if that's just creating more combos that, draw the eye pop or
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is just being approachable, like as a breeder, that
yeah,
if someone doesn't see the potential in lace, for example, if you're approachable as a breeder and they can just ask you, like, what is everyone seeing in this gene that maybe I'm missing? Or like, why is everyone so excited about it? I think, most breeders are pretty like happy to talk about these things usually and be like, well, we're stoked about it because the super is insane and does this
right,
and that and brightens. And so I think a lot of it is just being approachable to help educate newer people in the hobby too, and show them why we're making the decisions we're making in terms of what type of morphs we're bringing in. And
yeah.
then maybe that can help them, create their own collections too.
Right. Yeah, I think that that's a big thing you mentioned, obviously, like getting people to talk with breeders and stuff. And like we hit on with, NARBCs and the shows and stuff. I mean, I'm always curious because obviously every breeder is a little bit different as far as shows and stuff. I mean, do you like the shows? Do you enjoy it, or kind of like what's your favorite aspect of it or part of it? Obviously, no one if they're doing shows can be like, oh man, I hate shows because they wouldn't be there. But there's usually something, and it's always kind of unique. I mean, I know everyone has kind of that different experience with the shows. So
Oh, I love them. Absolutely love them. I think Tenley especially, I feel like are the best 2 weekends of the year, kinda.
yeah,
'Cause
I agree.
yeah, I mean, it's like because depending on where you are in the country and everything, there's a lot of people who are kind of breeding snakes, and a lot of the people, directly around them might think that's kind of strange, or like, it's kind of an oddball interest. But like
Right.
at Tinley, you're literally surrounded by thousands of people who are into the exact same thing, and just being able to connect with those people nonstop for 3 days is pretty incredible. So
Yeah.
I love just like nerding out with everybody. Like I love talking to anybody about their projects or what they're trying to make happen. Or even, I mean, people who are just new to the hobby too, and helping people get started. So like I think the shows are honestly like one of the best parts about breeding, because when you're just in your snake room by yourself, working on stuff, it's nowhere near as much fun as when you're able to actually, connect with other people over it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's true, because I think as you hatch more clutches, I feel like in the beginning when you have like your first 5 clutches, you're excited for every baby that comes
Yeah,
out, whether it's a normal or a 3-4 gene pied or whatever the heck that might be. But I feel like once you start hatching a lot of babies and consistently, sometimes you can hatch really cool stuff, but you don't have the same appreciation until it's on the table, and then someone else appreciates it,
yeah,
talks to you about it, and then it's like you have like that moment of like the quote unquote I made it, or whatever you want to call
yeah.
it.
Yeah, it definitely always feels really good if you get positive feedback on
Yeah.
something that you made, especially just like after how many years often go into, making that snake that's then on your table. So that is another aspect that I really enjoy, is kind of like October Tenley is kind of the highlight of the year where you can really show what you've been working on.
Right.
Like, these are the highlights from my season. They're literally on the table. You can come and see them in real life, not just in a picture, on
Yeah.
Instagram.
No, exactly. I mean, I think that same kind of concept too as well. I think like you said with Tinley is, I mean, you're seeing it in person. I think that gives people an opportunity, if they're thinking about a gene or something new, to be able to physically or have that tangible
Yeah,
connection. Which, like I said, I think that's just a big part of the hobby. I hear that a lot, that people still look at it almost like when you buy a car. Not a lot of people buy a car online; they still go to the dealership for it. I
yeah,
think
that's
that's
true.
that when they're new, or they're new about a gene, they wanna see it in person. They wanna see it in the display case or see it in their hands before they're gonna, throw the dollars at it and say, "Yeah, I'm gonna invest in this." So I think that's a real big thing. And I think, what's your goal? I guess every breeder is always different as far as what they kind of set their goal is. But I guess, what's always like your goal? If someone goes to the Morphologix table, and they walk away, whether they buy something or not, what's always kind of your goal that you hope that they take away from having that conversation with you, from checking out obviously your animals and your productions.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just want them to have a positive experience.
Yeah.
I don't want them to come by the Morphologix table and be like, "Oh, that guy, sucks." Like, I just, and I try to be as friendly and approachable as I possibly can be at shows, because there's often kids there who are, maybe they're afraid of snakes, and it's like we got to be friendly as breeders to show them that like not only are snakes friendly, but also the people who work with them are friendly. And so I just want people to have a positive experience
Yeah.
regardless of if they're buying anything or not. Like I literally I try to talk to every single person who comes by my table, because I know personally, before I was vending, when I used to go by people's tables and they wouldn't
Yeah.
give me the time of day, I was always kind of like, okay, well, I guess I'm not
Right.
important or something, which
Yeah.
is whatever. But it does make a difference ultimately when you
Yeah.
think about, the breeders who are friendly to you. Of course, you're more likely to, go back to them in the future.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think you brought up, I mean, 2 key points, which one, obviously, the kids piece there. I mean, I know like Troy was saying last year from Best Dress, he always said the same thing. I mean, you don't know when that, 6-year-old or 8-year-old or something like that then in 10 years they come back,
Yeah,
and then, they're, 18 or they're 21 or something. And then they went from my pet to, I'm looking to invest, I'm looking to breed, I'm looking to get in. And
totally.
I think people, they forget about that. There might be that gap in between. I mean, I, for one, I mean, I can think of the same thing. I mean, I was in lizards young, came back to lizards at a later date. I mean, didn't shift into snakes until my mid 20s,
Mhm.
but, everything from Euros and whatnot. I mean, all of that started from, where you started and who you already knew. That's who you're going to go back to. That's who you're going to give, the time of day to, because those are people who started when you were young. So, I think that, and I think the other piece, like you hit on, like everything you've been working so many years on. Ozzy mentioned, I think it was today, it took him 10 years to hit a Desert Ghost puzzle.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I don't think people realize that. I mean, obviously, folks like yourself, Ozzy, Justin, people who are going, double, triple recessive, even quad recessive now, or even just some of the complex combos and double and triple recessives that, like, it's not like it just pulls out of a hat or
Yeah.
something. Like there's literally, while there's odds, I mean, it's just like a racetrack. I mean, you could put all the money on the best odds and still lose.
Yeah,
So
it's tough, definitely, when you're trying to make those type of animals. Like, it can take you years, but that is why it's so much fun when you do finally hit that. It's just unreal.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of always one thing I kind of always curious about. Everyone's is different, but I mean, what's obviously going, you've been in it basically 10 years now, 2 years full time. I mean, what's the motivator? What's the thing that, kind of still gets you up in the morning, or the specific project right now that you're, 10 leagues under the sea, kind of in deep, that's really driving, the next 5, 8 years of probably your, collection and collection building?
That's a great question. I mean, honestly, there's quite a few. Like, I just love everything about breeding ball pythons, minus
Yeah.
eating in so much poop every day. But uh, other than that, like, honestly, I'm just always excited to see what the next thing that comes out is, because some of these pairings, I honestly have no idea what
Right.
might come out of it at all. But so, I mean, certainly, like, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but the redhead stuff, the Trojan stuff, black axanthic stuff, I'm so excited about. All kind lace. I am working
Yeah.
with lace too. And yeah, just, I mean, whenever there's anything hatching, I wake up first thing in the morning, immediately checking on whoever's
Yeah.
been, and
Uh,
it's still exciting every single time.
Are you to the point yet? I'm curious if I'm the only person that does this, or maybe you're just like me, where if something is hatching and let's say you've seen the pips, they're pipping, and maybe you're still kind of waiting on some, or they're probably going to be emerging, past pip out of the egg in the next, whether that be 48 hours, 24 hours or something. Are you that person that's setting your alarm at like 2:30, 3 a.m., waking you up? You go run down and you go check, and you're like, all right, is it out yet? Like, or am I that only nut job?
It might just be you, but
It's okay.
no, no. I mean, honestly, though, when I do wake up at like 3 in the morning, that is usually the first thing that goes through my head, is that immediately I'm just thinking like, oh, I want to go check it, but I'm like, I'll wait. I need to sleep still. Oh, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. See, what's Mike asking here? Mixing cryptic and clown. So the Krypton stuff.
So that's also a great question. So far, I had been keeping it totally separate, just because I didn't want to make it too confusing with having a whole bunch of essentially, the allelic combo.
Yeah.
But I honestly think I was holding myself back by doing that. So I honestly think it was a mistake in some ways for me to keep them entirely separate projects, because I have different incomplete dominant genes in my clown from my cryptic project.
Yeah.
And so at this point, I'm starting to mix them together. And especially for next year, I'm going to have quite a few pairings that could produce Krypton and Krypton Desert Ghost combos.
Yeah.
But actually, just yesterday, they're still finishing hatching right now, but was actually my first clutch that might be combining the two, which was from a Firefly Confusion Batman
Yeah.
male to a Super Orange Dream pinstripe that was 50% het cryptic. I honestly have no idea if she proved, because some of the babies look like Kryptons, but I
Right.
honestly can't tell. So I'm trying to, that's the ID nightmare that we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
but might take me a year or two to figure that one out. But yeah, I'm combining them now.
Yeah, I think that's the other interesting piece you mentioned, like, the ID nightmare. It might take some time. I mean, I see so many people, I think sometimes that they're so quick that they want to figure out all the IDs so that they know exactly, especially even on high dollar or value clutches that are very, a big piece of your personal brand and where you're trying to build your collection. I see so many people that are trying to rush to figure out the IDs and then they just want to move off what's left. And well, yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, there's the business, there's the margin side. Let's be realistic. The quicker
for
you
sure.
can, there's a better margin. But I think that that's a really good point. Is like just for people to, to press pause. Like it's okay to keep it that extra week or month or whatever. Like especially if it's something really unique or you're passionate about, just to ID it. I mean, I don't think that there needs to be that stress or that rush. I think appreciate you bringing that up because I feel like I see so many people that they're freaking out. They're like, oh, I just hit 5 meals or 6 meals. Like I want this thing gone. And I'm like,
Yeah,
like you can hold off. Like if you have something that's, special or unique to your project. So,
oh, honestly, I do that a lot because I want to be confident in my IDing skills. And so if there are snakes that I'm not too sure about, I always end up keeping them for a little bit, just both to make sure I'm providing any of my customers with a properly ID'd
right,
snake to the best of my abilities, but also just because I actually enjoy it from like my own educational standpoint
right,
when I'm able to learn that like, oh, after two sheds, now I can really see the red stripe coming out in this combo or something.
right.
If you had just sold it as a possible red stripe before that, it's maybe fine for your customer, knows that the gene could be there, but you're also kind of shorting yourself when you hatch another clutch down the road. It really helps you a lot when you take your time to really learn how to ID these things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I think, kind of looking at that, I mean, obviously now you've been in the industry 10 years and obviously you've learned a lot of tips and tricks of the trade as far as being able to ID. And I think everyone goes through kind of those trials and tribulations. But, when you were getting kind of started, was there, those one or those two breeders or something like that were really kind of I feel like everyone has that mentor or something like that. Or, I mean, if the mentor was Google too, you can say that as well.
To be honest with you, it kind of was Google, but really the ballpythons.net forum. I
Okay.
don't know if you spent time on there at all, but so that was before there were all the Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Instagram wasn't a thing.
Old
And
school.
so, yeah, like I would literally post pictures of my clutches on the ballpythons.net forums and be like, hey, can you guys help me out with this?
Yeah.
Granted, my pairings back then were also very simple. So when I was pairing like a champagne to a normal, I knew what was
Right.
out. But so that's gotten actually way harder ID wise, just because I'm hatching more and more complicated stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, the industry has come a long ways in terms of how people help each other out and really work together now compared
Yeah.
to 10 years ago. There were, of course, great breeders in it already, but for the most part, people seem to stick to themselves a lot more,
Right.
other than at the shows. But now it's like you can be in contact with thousands of people through Instagram or Facebook, and a lot of people are happy to help you out with IDs and stuff like that. So it's
Yeah.
honestly way better now, like if you do need help with IDs than ever before.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, and I think kind of the other thing too, I mean, kind of looking, kind of into the scope of this year and everything. We talked obviously about Redhead, DG, we talked about Cryptic, we talked about kind of putting some of those projects together. You know, is there anything specific, I mean, that you're maybe, I'm always just kind of curious that you're looking to add to the collection or looking to add to the flavor that you're thinking, man, maybe this is the next piece I need to add or be start, stacking into a project or something? Or is it still one of those things where it's always just kind of constant kind of open evaluation?
Both. So it's always open evaluation, which I think is super important. You don't want to get too far into one direction, I think, and just think that this is the only project you need to work on.
Yeah.
I think you need to always be evaluating your collection and thinking, do I just want to keep that snake, or do I really need it for my projects? Because
Right.
I've kept way too many animals over the years that I thought they were cool. I just wanted to keep them, but I probably should have kept it moving. But so I think you need to always be evaluating it. But right now, the gene that I really want to bring in is monarch.
Okay. Yep.
So I've been debating that one for literally 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah.
And for the last year, I've been looking for a monarch het clown male. If anybody knows where I can find one, like please let me know. But I've been looking for one. And when the right male's available, I'm gonna bring in a monarch het clown for sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, I
So,
mean that's one of those projects too. I mean, I know people that are buddies of mine and stuff like that. They went into Monarch, I went into Ultramill. I mean, I
yeah.
think again, it's one of those things where I think when people ask me about it, I mean, I still look at Monarch and Ultramill while they're similar. I mean, some of the reactions when you add things, I think they're completely different. Like I think a
Yep.
Monarch clown and an Ultramill clown are almost, much farther apart as far as what they look, how they age,
Yeah.
especially. I really almost I don't want to put Monarch on like that same pedestal, but sometimes when I look at it, just the darks, the burgundies in it, and the golds in it, it gives me kind of like almost like a T positive, like DG vibe to it, to a
Totally.
sense,
Yeah.
as far as how it ages. I guess that's one I'm kind of curious about because I think I want to say maybe Show Serpents did it, or maybe it was someone in Europe with the Monarch and the DG stuff. I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
DG and T positive albinos, there are a lot of people just in general. Same thing with DG and Ultramill, that people are like kind of like waffling if they think it's cool, if they think it's not, if they think it's got legs. I mean, has that been something that's kind of run through your mind as well, as far as
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, me and my buddies have like debated this to death about whether Monarch DG or Ultramel DG is worth pursuing. And
yeah,
personally, I think it is worth pursuing, but a lot of my buddies really hate on it.
yeah,
And so I don't know. I mean, both genes do phenomenal with obviously like clown or other pattern genes.
right,
And I think maybe your returns are kind of marginal when you're adding DG. It's like it might look a little better, but it's not, is it worth
right,
pursuing a whole nother recessive layer, which adds to the complexity and how long it's going to take you to make what you're trying to make. But that said, yeah, Sebastian and Adam at Showcase Serpents do have a Monarch DG, and I think
yeah.
it looks amazing.
Yeah, I was
Honestly,
gonna say I was pretty sure
so
I know it was them that I thought I had seen it posted one before. I know
yeah,
I had seen one before, and I thought that for me, I felt like had more oomph to it than the Ultramil DGs that I had seen over in Europe that were posted.
yeah, I think it has a little more contrast for sure. I mean, like you said, like Ultramel and Monarch, I think do different things in combos. And there's, I'm sure, plenty of genes that you'll want Ultramel instead of Monarch, but maybe
Right.
DG route, maybe Monarch's the way to go. But that said, I mean, I would prefer to bring Monarch into a clown project and do Monarch clown, and
Yeah.
then maybe mix that with some DG stuff down the road. But that's not really the top priority
Yeah.
for what I'm thinking about doing, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, kind of coming here to the top of the hour here, but I mean, I think main thing I always just try to highlight with people, I think is especially, we got the show coming up, here. It's going to be, 29th and 30th. I always notate if you haven't locked in VIP, you really should. It's the best way to see the show. Take advantage of it. Take your Friday off. Go hang out with vendors on Friday. Also go hang out on Friday because I'm going to be live on Friday with all of these vendors going around, and you're going to be able to get sneak peeks that way as well. But I think is there something specific? I mean, you're just really excited about, kind of going into Schaumburg here, or just, ready to get back to another show, or
Honestly, well, so this is my first time vending Schaumburg, so I'm
okay,
really
yep,
excited about that. Just to have a presence there with an actual booth
yeah,
is always really exciting. So mostly that, honestly. And then I think since hatching season is kind of just warming up for me, this is kind of like the test run before Tenley then comes in a couple months. So
before the 10,000 people rush to the door.
Yeah. Yeah, just to make sure I'm not too rusty at vending before that. So
yeah. I mean, I think kind of even looking into the second half of the season. I mean, is there something that either that hasn't dropped yet, or that you're excited about, or kind of hoping to see eggs on yet, that you're hoping is going to kind of tip the dial to the next step in one of your projects? Or
there's a few, but so one that I'm still hoping is going to go is my redhead fire spot nose het clown girl, who she laid last year and she's building currently, but she was paired to a lace Batman. So I'm really trying to build, like, ideally hit like a lace redhead Batman or lace redhead fire Batman, which I think would be nuts. And that would help bridge my lace project and the redhead stuff. So that's one that I would be amped if she ends up going. The black axanthic desert ghosts, both of my adult double het girls are at about 14 to 16 millimeters right now. So really hoping they keep going and get my long odds at hitting the double visual, even if it takes me another 10 years to do it. But,
all right.
I have some white lace stuff in the incubator right now, some other lace clown combos. I have another shot at disco redhead Batman stuff in the incubator right now. Pretty good variety, a few confusion clown clutches, and I'll have at least one or two more clutches for desert ghost clowns. It could be late any day, so maybe on the table by Tenley, who knows?
Maybe. I mean, you heard it, folks. I mean, definitely, like, I highlight everyone, if you see this episode, whether you watch live or you watch this tomorrow, next week, whatever it may be, if you see Marcus at a show, feel free to go by, stop by the booth, say hi, talk to him.
Please do.
Get to learn about his collection, all of his cool things he has going on. Same thing, even if it's online, if it's on Instagram, you see something cool, reach out. I mean, that's what I always tell people with this is, this is a way to connect you guys, the viewers, with these breeders, so you can have that confidence, get to know them, get to know their projects, get to know their collection, just kind of get those different insights from people who have been doing this for a real long time. So, I mean, from my side with Nick Karaskevich with the tread, I mean, Marcus, I mean, I can't appreciate it enough. I mean, I think you are the first Chicagoland person from my hometown that has actually been on the tread. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And,
I mean, for having me.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I'll, leave it to you for any last words that you want to say to folks, and then we'll close it out here, folks.
I would just like to say thanks for having me on, and thanks for watching. Definitely come stop by at Schaumburg. I'm really approachable. Like, I want to just nerd out about snakes. So stop by and we can chat. And I genuinely appreciate everyone who supports me. This has literally allowed me to live the dream for the last 2 years, and can't wait to keep doing it for the future. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. All right, folks, we will talk to you next week. We have Jason Amos live right before NARBC, and then don't touch that dial. Friday, NARBC during VIP. I will be live going around to multiple booths, showing off what all the different vendors have brought. So make sure you tune in. Next week, we got a double special. See y'all next week.